that. All right. I invite your attention to one of the great Old Testament books, and that's going to be Joshua, the book of Joshua. Joshua is actually one of these risk takers that we're going to allude to, but we're not going to do an in-depth dive on him. But you can see the idea of the adventure of walking by faith. And some of these Bible characters that we're going to examine give us such a great example of someone who could have, for various reasons, shrunk back from the responsibilities they had. It was a adventure, yes, but it also was a big risk that some of these people took to take a stand for God. And sometimes that stand was to stand alone. And so as we approach the book of Joshua, we're going to see this ascension of Joshua to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. And so with that in mind, we're going to look at this first character this evening, and lesson number 1 is on Rahab. I went right past it. Rahab, a faith not held back by fear. This is, of course, a great Old Testament story. We know some of these people by name, but we often know some of these people quickly by their identity, by the sobriquet that they carry, the nickname. If I say Rahab, you say the harlot, right? And so this is a woman of questionable character before she comes to know God. But what's really interesting, as we're going to discover tonight, she's going to come to know God and believe in the true and living God even before the Israelites make their advance towards Jericho where she lived. And so we're going to talk about that and visit the issue of Rahab with this main point. Faith acts when others are paralyzed by fear. I don't know if you've ever had one of those experiences in your life where whatever the circumstance was, it was a scary moment for you. You were fearful. You were paralyzed by fear, perhaps. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those situations where you physically, viscerally get shaking because of fear. And a lot of times, those fear things can be paralyzing. There's going to be a whole city that is going to be paralyzed by fear of what's about to happen to them. But this woman is going to act in faith. All right? So I want to invite your attention to the second chapter of Joshua. This is one of my great stories that I love to examine and talk about because of the remarkable strategy that God reveals to Joshua on how they're going to defeat this major walled city, the biggest obstacle standing between them and the Canaanite conquest. Jericho was a huge city for that day. It was a huge fortified city, walled city. And it's going to be the first obstacle as they come into the land of promise to begin the conquest. All right. Joshua does not know what the plan is. As we read through chapter 2, we're going to see that he's going to send a couple of spies into Jericho to surveil what it's like, maybe find some weaknesses. At the moment that this all happens, God has not revealed to Joshua what's going to happen. Now, we know the rest of the story, and we know that God's going to give a very unusual strategy for defeating the city of Jericho. But just in order to get ready, he sends these two spies in. Now, you'll remember in the book of Exodus, Numbers, Moses had done that too, right? He had sent spies in to get an idea of the layout of the land and what they were facing as they approached the conquest. And who were the two spies that came back and gave a good report? Joshua and Caleb, all right? Those are going to be the only two men over the age of 20 that are going to survive the 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Because of their lack of faith, all of the adults were going to die in the wilderness during that 40-year period of God's judgment because they lacked faith. And you know what paralyzed them? Fear. They said, we are like giants. They are like giants to them. We are like grasshoppers. We don't have a chance. And Joshua and Caleb, who had been with Moses like the rest of them from the beginning, remembered God and what God had done to the Egyptians. And these are the same people who a year before this happens had walked through the Red Sea. How could they possibly question God being able to deliver them? But the 10 spies gave a bad report. They said, we don't have a chance. We don't have a prayer. And because the rest of the people followed their lead, God said, okay, you're going to have to spend some time thinking about that. Okay, so now we're on the precipice of them coming. And it comes to chapter 2, and with Rahab, this is the first point we want to make. So, again, the main point, faith acts when others are paralyzed by fear. Rahab courageously hid the Israelite spies, defying the king's commands. All right? So let's delve into those scriptures and just kind of walk through this. Now, again, I want you to remember, at this point, Joshua does not know what the plan is. Just trying to be a good strategist, he thought, I'm going to go ahead and surveil this. I'm going to send some spies into the area and see if they can maybe find the weakest points for us to gain a victory over Jericho. So we come to Joshua chapter 2, and notice the first, we're going to deal ultimately with the first 4 verses here, but this is the first thing I want to deal with. And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, even Jericho. And they went and came into an harlot's house named Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, there came men in hither tonight of the children of Israel to search out the country. All right, we'll stop there for a second. So these 2 spies surreptitiously sneak across the Jordan River. They're looking at the land surrounding Jericho, but their primary objective is to look at Jericho. So they come into the city. And this is a providential hand of God working, and I'm going to point that out to you tonight. But these 2 men end up going to this woman's home, and it specifically says in verse 1 that they went there and came into an harlot's house named Rahab and lodged there. All right, couple quick things. First of all, these 2 Israelite men were not looking for a harlot's house. They were looking for a place to lodge. She probably ran an inn or a hotel out of her home, but within that, there was a brothel. All right? So, but these 2 Hebrew men were not looking for this. But they come to this place, and again, I'm saying it's providentially, and you're going to see why as we continue the story. Because this woman who they first approach is going to be one of the only people, maybe the only person in all of Jericho that believes something significant about the God of Israel. Okay? So the king of Jericho heard about these spies that are somewhere, and it had been pointed out that they had originally gone over to Rahab's house. So there are going to be immediate assignments for military people to go over there and see if those guys are there, and if so, to bring them in, probably to be killed. All right, the next couple of verses. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and said thus, there came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were. Okay, so we'll stop right there for a minute. Really, that first part of verse 4, and the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Now, at this point, she knows what the king's orders are. I want those 2 guys. I heard they came to your house. But in defiance of the king's command, she hides them. And so we're gonna develop that story in a moment. But initially, we would be puzzled why this woman would risk her life to hide these two Hebrew spies. What would motivate her to do that? To basically act as a treasonous act against the king of Jericho by not revealing that they had come there. And yet, the rest of the story is going to be unveiled, and we're going to see exactly why she does what she does. All right. So, the first thought is this fact that Rahab courageously hid the Israelite spies, defying the king's command. All right, we're going to jump down a couple verses with the second thought about it, connection number 2. While those around her lived in fear, you're going to see that, Rahab aligned herself with the Israelites and sought their protection. Now, it's more than that. She's going to align herself with the God of Israel. So, jump down a couple verses and join me at verse 8. Still in chapter 2 of Joshua, chapter 2, verse 8. And before they were laid down, she came up upon to them upon the roof. All right. The verses we didn't read, she's hidden them among the flax that were drying out on the top of her roof. Flat roofs in those days, but they would use them for all kinds of various reasons. But she had these flax sheaves hiding up on the top of the roof, and she hides these guys. Well, again, she doesn't know what's going to happen, but she is doing an act of rebellion in all reality. And so, when the soldiers had been redirected outside the city to go look for them, she says to them, "Hey, I want to talk." Verse 9, and she said unto them, I know that the Lord hath given you the land. Now you think what's going on here. The words of this woman reveal that she is totally believing in the God of Israel. And she knows that God is going to deliver them into the Israelites' hands. All right? And she went on to say, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. Now, I want you to hear what she is saying. All right. Somebody help me again. How long before this incident had they crossed the Red Sea? Say it. 40 years. And she is going to reveal that for 40 years, all of the Canaanite people have been petrified of the God of Israel, because they had all heard what happened to Pharaoh and the 10 plagues down there, and that when Pharaoh pursued them, they crossed the Red Sea on dry ground, and Pharaoh's armies were destroyed, right? All of that had become quick and shocking news to these Canaanite people. And this woman now, who did not even live when that happened, says, I know what happened. And I know that the Lord is going to give you this land, and that your terror has fallen upon all of us. You understand what I'm saying? They're all scared to death of the God of Israel. Okay, we keep reading. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. Now, these two kings, these Amorite kings, over on the east side of the Jordan River, the areas of Moab and the areas of Ammon, those kings were powerful kings. But God had supernaturally delivered those strong kings into the hands of the Israelites. They had been totally annihilated. And Israel had taken over that whole portion of the country. The people of Jericho were scared of that. How in the world can these slaves from the past come up here and be such a military force? Well, they concluded the right thing. Their God fights for them. And this woman says, we have been, watch it now, we have been petrified for 40 years that you are coming because of what happened to Egypt and what happened at the Red Sea. All right? Her testimony continues. She goes on and says, and as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God. Watch, what is she about to say as a testimony? For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Folks, that is a powerful statement of faith. These are pagan people. They worship all kinds of idols. But not this woman. Yes, she may have had a flawed past, but she has come to believe that the God of Israel, Yahweh, He is the God of heaven above and of the earth beneath. That is an acknowledgement that He is the creator and He is the most powerful deity in existence. And all of these things that have transpired in the past, again, before Rahab was even born, she had heard the stories, and the people of Jericho are still afraid of what's going to happen when these people come. Right now, they're on the other side of the Jordan. But the city of Jericho, this high-walled city, they look out there and they can see all of these Israelites. Perhaps 1.5 million people over there. And they're just staring at them, going, these are the ones that 40 years earlier destroyed Egypt, came out, walked across the Red Sea on dry ground, and now, after defeating Sihon and Og, some of our enemies, they're here. And the people of Jericho were afraid. And that's what Rahab is confirming. We know. Once we heard about all that, our hearts melted within us. Do you understand how profound that statement is? She said, the 10 spies, the 12 spies come out. Joshua and Caleb say, we can do it. God's with us. The other 10 said, we don't have a prayer. We're like grasshoppers. They're giants. Huge walled cities. Yes, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. But we can't do it. And it discouraged all the people. But the people of Canaan have been afraid for 40 years. If they had just been in obedience 40 years earlier, they would have had the conquest then. Because the Canaanites were already petrified. Now they've been scared for 40 years, waiting for this to happen. Okay. So Rahab is explaining this, but she's also explaining what she believes about the God of Israel. Notice, now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token. In other words, swear an oath, promise me, and that you will save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. So in facing the fear of this potential destruction, Rahab says, listen, I know your God is going to deliver us into your hands. I just want to ask you one thing. Since I've helped rescue your lives, promise me that you'll take care of us, my family. Okay? So, these two spies agree to that. They say, as long as you don't tell anybody about our mission, we will see to it that you are rescued. Okay. And the man answered, our life for yours. If ye utter not this our business, and it shall be, when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. Okay. I want to take just a pause here for a moment. We're going to jump over to chapter 6 to finish the story. But when we read in chapter 3 of Joshua, we're not going to take the time to do it, but I want to reference it, and you will remember. Does anybody remember what happens in chapter 3 of Joshua to get the children of Israel from the east side of the Jordan over to the same side of the Jordan where Jericho is located? Say it. All right. Do you remember that? God gives instruction to Joshua, who still doesn't know what the plan of victory is yet, but he said, listen, take the Ark of the Covenant, put it on the priest's shoulders so they carry it properly, and as the priests step into the Jordan River, it's going to stop running. In fact, it's going to just kind of dam up, and the rest of it's going to roll out, and it's going to turn dry ground. And it's not going to be single file across the Jordan. It's going to be a half a mile wide where they're just going to come straight across. But what you need to remember when that happens, the people of Jericho are standing there watching it. What do you think they're thinking? What's that reminding them of? 40 years earlier, the Red Sea parting, now right in front of them, the Jordan River parts. And they walk over on dry ground, and then the water comes back. After the Israelites have picked up a stone for each tribe, right? Stack it up over there. What's the meaning of these stones, Dad? And for generations, the Israelite descendants will say, this is what this is all about. The parting of the Jordan. Okay. I just find that to be so profound. Think with me for a moment. I mentioned it already earlier. At what age was the line of demarcation where the people that were older than that age were going to die in the wilderness, with the exception of Caleb and Joshua? 20 years old. So that means there are people now who were under 20 that are still alive. And even if they've gone all the way through the 40 years of wandering, there's nobody that's over 60. This is my point. Do you realize that there are people who were under the age of 20 who walked through the Red Sea? Now, 40 years later, they're seeing the Jordan River part, and they're walking through on dry ground. That's a group of people that are going to be motivated, don't you think, to follow what God says? And it's right in front of the people of Jericho. They're going to be scared to death when they see this. If their hearts melted within them 40 years earlier because of Egypt, I guarantee you, they're scared of this one. And Rahab saw it too. And she had to wonder, the God of Israel, I have chosen wisely. He's the God of heaven above and the God of the earth beneath. And she gives a remarkable testimony of faith in that God. Okay. A couple other quick points before I transition to chapter 6 and the third final point. One thing that I also want to highlight and point out is in Joshua chapter 5, Joshua has an encounter. He's going out before any of this is revealed to him on what's going to happen. And in chapter 5 of the book of Joshua, Joshua goes out and he's standing kind of on the precipice of a hill looking at this huge obstacle in front of them, the walled city of Jericho. He still doesn't know the plan. And all of a sudden, it tells us that he meets this massive, battle-clad soldier, huge soldier in full battle array. And Joshua asks a relevant question. Whose side are you on? Are you on our side or their side? And this soldier says, "Nay, Joshua, I've not come to take sides. I've come to take over." He was the captain of the Lord's army. We would point to this as probably one of those very clear examples of a Christophany, a visual appearance of the Lord Jesus Christ in the Old Testament, a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus before he was born as a human. What would cause us to come to that conclusion? Why would we say this soldier who identified himself as the captain of the hosts of the armies of God as possibly an appearance of Jesus? Say it, Eddie. Yes. Joshua, upon hearing that, hits his knees and falls prostrate before this soldier. Now, mark it down. You do not find any place in the Bible where an angel allows someone to worship them. In fact, every time it ever happens where somebody hits their knees out of fear, no. But this person allows Joshua to worship him and then proceeds to say, "Joshua, remove your sandals. Where you stand is holy ground." It's holy because he's there. Okay. The plan is then revealed. And what a silly, seemingly, strategy this is. Just want you to walk around the city. All the soldiers, the priests with the ark, priests with trumpets, just quietly walk around the city. All right? One time. And then go back to camp. For 6 days, right? They do that. What do you think the people of Jericho are doing every day when these Israelites start walking around the city in total silence? Where are those people at? In all probability, where are the people of Jericho at? They're on top of the wall going, "What's happening?" Right? Then on the seventh day, what's going to happen? All of a sudden, it's different. Okay, before I advance that thought, I had provided a couple slides. I don't think, I'll check and see. Are they there? No. I provided a couple slides to Micah, and he may just have missed them. But archaeologically, I've been to Jericho many times, and I always point out to those who have been there about the mud brick composition of walls that are still in the stratigraphy. And I sent a couple pictures to give evidence of that. We know that mud brick was the common component for building in those days. And it's most likely that Jericho did not have a huge wall of stones and boulders. It was probably these mud brick walls. Now, they may have been very high and very thick. In fact, Rahab's house is built into one of these big walls because she's got a window on the outside. Remember, that's how she let the spies out. So, what's the evidence I'm talking about that we know from earlier Scripture about mud bricks being building composition? Anybody remember where that's at? Yes, good. It's Egypt. Remember when Pithom and Ramses, those royal cities, were being built by the slaves Israel? They had to make mud bricks because that was the building composition in those days. They would make these mud bricks in forms. They would have straw in it to give some rebar type constitution to it. Then they would fire these bricks in ovens, and they would become very powerful, strong. Now, the walls of Jericho, in all likelihood, were maybe 30 feet or more high, and maybe 20 feet thick, with homes built into the walls along the way. Casemate walls is what we call them. So my suggestion is this, and some of you have been with me already to Jericho. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Mike and Mickey, you were there. Scott and Denise, Paul and Patty, Pam's been there, Helen's been there. Probably missing somebody. Anybody else has been there? Oh, yeah, Russ and Becky, sure. John, yeah. Okay, but at Jericho, I point out these mud brick walls still in the stratigraphy of Jericho. Let me give you this thought. People often ask the question, the walls of Jericho fell down flat. Remember, that's what God says will happen. But I always struggled with, first of all, archaeologically, we don't find huge piles of rubble, stones that used to be a wall that fell down. A pastor I had years ago said he thought that because they were so big, the walls, but it says that they fell down flat, he thought they just kind of elevated right down just so that it went to the level to the ground. Well, if that was the case, we would have found those walls. We haven't. But let me suggest this. If these walls are mud brick, all right, on that seventh day, something's happening. It's different than every other day. They keep walking around the walls 7 times, still quietly. You know, at that point, the curiosity of the people inside is the vast majority of the people of Jericho are on top of the walls, believing they're completely secure, but they're wondering, what is going on? Now, the Israelites are far enough away so they can't throw rocks at it or shoot arrows at them. I mean, there's a little bit of distance, but they clearly are in view. After the 7th time, what happened? Anybody remember what was God's command after the 7th time? The priests would blow trumpets, and everybody was going to shout. And God's orders were, when that happens, everybody turn and walk straight into the city. Right? The walls are going to fall down flat, and you go straight into the city. This is what I think happened. And it's not novel with me. I've not heard a lot of people suggest this idea, but because my belief of the mud brick compositions, I believe the vast majority of people were on top of the walls. When they shouted, you know what God did? I think he just exploded the walls, pulverized them. It's dust. And watch this. The vast majority of the people of Jericho perished by God's action, not by the Israelites. Now all they do is go in on a cleanup operation. But I believe the walls were just pulverized, disintegrated. The people of Jericho fell, most of them to their death. And that's why there's no evidence of walls at Jericho still fully intact that were just down in the ground somewhere. We've not found anything like that. But I do believe that this could be a possible answer. Okay, so with that in mind, this is what I want you to remember. The walls of Jericho fall down flat. They go straight into the city and clean up what they need to clean up. No one's to be spared. But you know what? There's one little part of the wall that's still standing. How do we know? It's got a scarlet cord hanging out the window. The spies had said, our life for yours. Anybody that's here in your house, when we come, we will rescue you. If they're somewhere else in the city, there's nothing we can do for that. But if they're here in your home, Rahab, we will save them. God will save them. All right? So the final thought. Rahab's courageous faith led to the rescue of her whole family. Let me just read the verses with very little context or comment. Okay, right. But Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house and bring out thence the woman and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And the young men that were spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brethren and all that she had, and they brought out all her kindred and left them without the camp, outside of the camp, to Israel. They are rescued. They are saved by the faith of a woman who believed that the only God, the only true God, was the God of Israel. And her faith was displayed by the action of saving the spies, and then the action of her following with the demand, let that scarlet thread hang out of your window, and God will protect you, and we will come and find you. You know this perhaps, but Rahab marries into the Jewish family. Her family is assimilated into the Jewish community. Rahab, in Matthew, is named as one of the descendants, one of the ancestors in the line of David and the line of Jesus, because of her faith. Folks, I don't know that you'll ever face a situation where you're petrified by fear. But if it's in defending God, if it's standing up for biblical principles, if you're standing alone, testifying of your faith when everyone else around you is mocking you, remember Rahab, who wasn't paralyzed by fear. She did what she knew she needed to do, and her faith was evident in her response. She believed God, and God saved her and incorporated her into his family of the Jewish people. And she is such a great success story, isn't she? All right. Sorry I took too long on that. Had to work in those mud bricks. But listen, Rahab is a great example of somebody who took a great risk in order to prove that she believed in the true and living God. God rewarded her faith and ultimately saved her entire family because of her courage. All right? Thank you for your kind attention. Brother James, if you'd please come, we'll have a short season of prayer. All right? Thank you. Yeah, probably. Thank you.
Check 1, check 2, check 3. Checks in the mail. Thank you so much, Ray. That was wonderful. You held us spellbound. And then you got into the lesson. And it really held us spellbound. Thank you so much. Does anyone have a prayer card, right here? Here comes Ed. Thank you, Ed. Anyone else prayer card? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. If you have your prayer books, your prayer sheets.
I hate to interrupt.
Yes.
But I just
All right, let's let Maribel. Come on. Maribel, you want it? You want to come teach the lesson? Okay. I just want to give her a chance. I'm trying to stay on her good side, you know. How many have your prayer list? Open it up. Hold it out there. All right. Put it in front of you. I'm not going to read them. You have it in front of you. I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to look at the categories here for a moment. I want you to notice, first of all, the long-term shut-ins. There's several who are listed here. People who they just need our prayers. They get lonely, they're sick, there's other issues going on with them, and they certainly need our prayers. And secondly is the bereavement category.